Dr. Carla Van Laar is a painter, author, educator, arts therapist, and supervisor who has 30 years' experience working with people and the arts for health and well-being in community organizations, justice, health, and education contexts. She is the author of 2 books that break taboos and make subjugated stories visible through art, Bereaved Mother's Heart and Seeing Her Stories. Carla is driven by a commitment to the values and epistemologies of arts-based collaborative practice. Welcome to the Conscious Creator Series, brought to you by New Earth Arising. I'm Kattimoni.
And I'm Exodus.
And our mission is to uplift and empower you to liberate your creative potential.
Master your mindset, raise your vibration, and bring your visions to life.
This is for the visionary people, the conscious creators, leaders of love and the soul elevators, artists of life, yeah, movers and shakers, heart-centered, change makers, visionary people, the conscious creators, leaders of love and the soul elevators, artists of life, yeah, movers and shakers, heart-centered, change makers.
Welcome, Carla Van Laar. Welcome to Conscious Creators. It's so great to have you on the series.
Thanks.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome.
We'd really love to just hear a little bit more about your journey and, what kind of foundational pieces led you to what you're doing.
Wow, way to start, right? So I guess I think of myself as mainly a visual artist.
Okay.
And, that comes back to even just being fascinated and really enjoying my sense of sight. So ever since I was a tiny child, so, preschool age, I can remember just like looking at things and like, I've actually got very early visual memories. I've got one from when I was in a plastic bathtub in the laundry sink, and I can see exactly what was out the window in my mind's eye. And I told my mum, and she said, "You can't remember that. Like, you were only 2 months old." Right. But I've just always really loved what I can see. And so that's just a source of incredible joy to me, is looking around the world, looking out and seeing what I see. And then doing visual art is kind of an extension of that in some ways. There's a quote I put at the start of my book, which is here, and it's by Georgia O'Keeffe. And I think she says, when you hold a flower in your hand and you see it, it's your world for that moment. And I want to show you my world and share it with you. Right. And so, to me, seeing is a source of joy and pleasure and connection with the world. Being a visual artist is a way of deepening into that, and showing artworks is a way of connecting with people. And so, often when I'll see your artwork, I'll connect in and go, wow, there's something in there that resonates with something inside me. And people tell me that happens to them sometimes when they see my artwork as well. So, that's kind of the source. It's, creativity and connection.
Awesome.
I think.
I love that. Creativity and connection.
Awesome.
They're two of my highest values, I'd say. And I love the way art kind of gives us that little window into someone else's soul and their experience and their whole perspective of the world. Yeah. Tell us about your book that you've got there.
That's my book, Seeing Her Stories. It's sort of it's based on my art-based research, which was my my doctoral project, actually. So I spent 10 years researching what can happen when a woman's stories are seen, as opposed to, when they go unseen. And that sort of relates to, the art world and the way that women's artwork has kind of been excluded, from the history of art. And, women have been reclaiming that space for, decades now. But decades isn't that long in, this, in the scheme of, the modern age, right? It's still reasonably new. And although my artwork was about what can happen when a woman's stories are seen through creating visual artworks, if you go into the deeper layers of that, it's about, making subjugated stories more visible, generally speaking, and, making more spaces for more of the stories of all of the people of the world is really important. So that's the book. And I found lots of interesting things in there about creative process and creating and sharing with other people, and some themes emerged in there that I still find really fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, it's seeing her stories. Oh, see, that's a double page spread. That's the picture I'm sitting in front of.
Wow.
Okay. So you're a piece as well, right? You're a painting.
Yeah, they're all my paintings. Yeah.
Yeah. I see that you are into therapy. So I just want to know, as an artist, I'm an artist. I never really heard about art therapy before. I know people go and get therapy, and there are therapists. So what does art therapy really entail, and what's the difference between art therapy and arts practice?
That's the question of the moment. Well, my answer is that arts therapy engages the power of the arts to support healing and connection and well-being. And also it's facilitated by a trained mental health professional, and that's your art therapist. So yeah, I do deeply believe in the transformational healing properties of art, and that's art-based practices have been used by human beings for millennia for those reasons. And to me, that that's evidence in and of itself. There's the cultural, the historical, and the sociological evidence that art heals, art connects, and art heals, right? And now,
when you think about arts as dance and singing and all these different types of genres,
yeah, creating in whatever way. So making something outside ourselves, even if it's a gesture or a movement, making something that demonstrates in the world something that lives inside ourselves, I guess.
Okay.
So, but then having somebody who's sort of trained to facilitate and who's also educated in, I guess, holding space and supporting people's mental health and well-being, that's kind of where the art therapist comes in as well. Yeah. And artists, and lots of art therapists are artists. Lots of art therapists work with and collaborate with artists. To me, art is at the heart of all the things I do, and I wouldn't want to be a therapist without art, that's for sure.
Right. So art therapy is something that kind of, you would say, came about in the last 10 years or so, last 5 years, because it's kind of new for me. Hearing about it is kind of new for me,
In
But I know art in its own could heal people, or so
there was a couple of traditions of art therapy that emerged around in the 1930s, sort of in between World War I and World War II, and there was like a European tradition, an American tradition, and an English tradition. So there's kind of founders from those three different places, but they're all working at around the same time. Okay. And coming from slightly different perspectives as well. There's Edith Kramer in America. She was an artist. And in England, there was Adrian Hill. He was a returned serviceman, and he was a modernist painter. He painted himself back into health when he was in hospital with tuberculosis. And then in Europe, you had like Jung, investigating the unconscious and symbols through his own art making. So yeah, you had these streams coming through, and to kind of come together in different ways to form what's now known as art therapy. And in Australia, at least, art therapy, it's kind of expanded, and we use the term arts therapy more now. And that's because we work intermodally. So, you know, even like the idea that all movement is the basis of all art, you know, the breath and the body, and then everything comes from there, whether it's movement or sound or gesture or mark making.
Yeah. Rituals was coming to my head as well, you know.
Yeah.
Different types of rituals.
Mm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I was just thinking that because, you know, even though art therapy as a practice is gaining a lot more, what's the word? Credibility and more awareness of it, and people are starting to recognize the power of art therapy. In the modern sense, it's actually something that's so ancient, right? Like ancient cultures have been using arts as therapy and as healing practices and rituals for forever, right? And one thing that you just mentioned around the power of art to really bring to the surface things, you know, whatever is going on in our unconscious, and to bring that through in the art making process and practice. And I feel like in my journey as an artist and entrepreneur, in creating anything, it's like whatever we're creating, it's going to be fused with our, you know, our unconscious content, whatever that is, right? It's gonna, your blocks are gonna come up, your fears, your doubts, whatever is kind of lingering under the surface is gonna come through in that process. And I'm curious to ask you, I'm sure that, you know, you've created so much in your life, so much different content and bodies of work. What have been some of those major obstacles or challenges or things that have come up for you over the years? And how has art personally helped you to transform some of those?
Yes. So there's such an important part of the story for anyone, I think, who's a creative, is how our creativity helps us get through life. So I've been an artist like probably all my life. Let's just say all my life, right? I didn't become an art therapist until 20 years ago, or 21 now, when I graduated with my master's degree. But before that, I was working as a community artist and working with people. But I first came across art therapy with my son, Vaughan, who was very little. And when he was about 17 months old, he started becoming unwell, and we used to visit the Children's Hospital a lot. And that's, you know, and I'd never been somebody who, you know, engaged very much with institutions. You know, I left school early and things like that. So, visiting the hospital on a regular basis was probably one of the most engaged that I became with an institution after being a young, you know, hippie and artist and all of that. Anyway, that's where I got introduced with my son to art therapy in that setting. And really, he had a short life. Okay, so Vaughan lived until he was 3 years and 9 months old. And he had a beautiful little existence. Well, not little, it was huge, actually. It was huge for many people. And very huge in its impact, his life. And so for me, at the age of 25, I was a bereaved mother, and I was dealing with having lost my beautiful son and trying to find a way to keep on living, stay on the planet, to bring up my other little son, who's, you know, still with us now. He's 25. And that's when I decided to study art therapy. So, in fact, my first book came out of my master's project, and it's called Bereaved Mother's Heart. And it was, you know, I did that project, or had that experience at a time when less was known or even acceptable about personalising your grief rituals, for example. And lots of things were still taboo, and maybe they still are, about, you know, what the experience of grief is like, and the experience of being a bereaved parent, what that's like. And so that was my early mission, was to bring some of those things to heal for myself, and then take that healing and bring it out into public awareness, so that maybe other people who have been through something similar could have, or could find places where maybe more of their experience that in some other contexts might not be socially acceptable, where that could be affirmed and recognised and validated. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's, the most significant, tragedy of my life. But, having got through that, it's difficult for me to imagine anything that creativity couldn't help me through. So, in all my times, because we all have ups and downs, right? So in all of my times of despair or loss or grief or transition, then creativity is always where I turn to.
Yes. I could totally relate to that, Totally relate to that, yeah. Whenever there's something that kind of, shakes up my life, or as you said, it could be tragedy, it could be anger, it could be something that triggers your life. It really sends me to the canvas to really go inside and bring out all of that expression, that's bottled up inside. So as we talk about that, could you tell us about any of your do you have any creative process, or do you do any rituals before you get on your creative plane, before you get on your canvas?
Yeah. So probably about 10 years ago, I started painting from life. So prior to that, I would often sort of take photos of things that interest me, and maybe even get the photos developed and create a montage or a collage, and I'd work in the studio. And then 10 years ago, I started just painting in situ, so from life, so from what's right before my eyes. Okay, right. So there's this much more immediacy. Right? Yeah. And I know you're musicians, so you do this when you're creating with each other, right? You're there together making something in relationship. So for me, this practice, and I love painting nature, actually, because I love organic shapes and organic forms, and they always teach me so much. Okay, but sometimes I've lived in the city, right? So I might be surrounded by buildings, and I'm going, where's the shape of nature? What have I got to look at to bring me back to my own connectedness with the creativity of the universe? And then I'd find myself looking at the sky and going, okay, I can see clouds here. There's something moving and alive and an organic shape. Yeah. So even when I'm in the city, and people might think I'm painting the buildings, but I'm not actually. I'm painting the sky that's coming through between the buildings. So this practice it's about becoming deeply present, actually, and in relationship with the living world. So, and it often takes, as you said, the ritual of it is like the preparation. So I'll walk around and I'll look around, and it's about being really attuned to how a space is affecting me and my body and in my senses, and then going, okay, I can feel something here. I want to spend some more time here. I want to bring my gear here and sit down and spend hours just being in this spot and creating in response, in direct relationship with the environment. So that's my ritual.
Nice.
I love that synergy that happens, and that thinking about your process as a relationship. That's really beautiful. And I relate to that a lot as a musician too, like that dance that happens, between the artists and feeding off the energy. And I never thought of a visual artist having that same kind of synergy with a space or with a place.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is that it's very intuitive, choosing where to sit or where to stand and where to make art. It's just very intuitive. And every single time, I like learn something from that place. And I'm told something that's an important message for me through my relationship there. So it starts off just a sense or a feeling or an intuition, and then through that it sort of becomes apparent to me that there's something really important for me, at this point in my life, something for me to remember or, to bring into my awareness about just how I'm being in the world at the moment.
That's interesting. Do you feel like developing, like cultivating that intuition within your arts practice has also helped you cultivate that in life too? Do you feel that that's opened that up in other areas?
It totally does, Katty. Yes. So especially that idea of tuning in and connecting and being present. So they're all things that we do as a therapist. So I feel that my own art practice helps me to be a better art therapist. And when I say that, I don't mean better than somebody else. I just mean being my
best that you can be. Yeah.
I can be. Yeah. And of course that travels through life, because if, the better we get at being present and connected and connecting and being in relationship, the more we are connected and in relationship, and, we know how good those things are for our well-being.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because you're such a creatress. Like, you have so many different projects that are on the ball, and so many different offerings and ways in which you pour your creativity into. And I'm curious, how important is self-care and nurturing your own well-being and caring for your own well-being as someone who's, as an art therapist, you're putting a lot out into the world, you're holding space for a lot of other people as well. So yeah, what are some ways that you practice well-being for yourself?
It's so important. Just on a daily basis, just getting out and moving. So, just exercising. It's a very basic thing, but, as I mentioned, moving through space is sort of a creative process in some ways as well, like curating the daily movement. And being creative every day. I care for myself in so many ways. I'm a vegan, so I care about myself and animals and the planet and the atmosphere. But then, self-care expands into, being creative. I'm sure you do it too, being creative as a way of living. So caring about the food that you eat or that you make and eat, and making that artful, and even, connecting with friends and family, seeking professional help. I do, I have regular supervision and I get massages,
Nice.
Just at times, if I've had something, really difficult. So, for example, after I came back from Nepal, where I'd been working after the earthquakes, and I came back, and one morning I kind of woke up, but I couldn't move in my bed and I couldn't open my eyes, and I felt like there was this big, like a rafter or something, a wooden beam or something pressing me down. And I was terrified. I eventually opened my eyes and realised I was in my own bed. But it was as though, my body had held on to some earthquake trauma, right? And in quite in a way that really affected me and my ability to work. So on that occasion, I sought lots of help because I had to go back to work. So I would have like an energy cleansing, and then I had acupuncture. I saw my psychologist, who was my supervisor. I went to an art exhibition and saw some beautiful artwork, and I connected with my friends and family, and also had a massage. So sometimes you need a lot.
Yeah.
So there's daily practices, and then there's when things are really challenging, bringing in all the sources. That's what I do.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds really holistic, and it sounds it's so important, like for us to keep filling up that well within ourselves, particularly when we're giving so much, and to be able to create from that place of fullness, rather than depletion. So I know that you
Can I show
are.
you? Sorry, before you go on, I'll show you what I'm doing at the moment, because I've got this daily practice. I'm going out, and on my morning walk, I'm creating little mandalas out of found objects. So like that's just one with little rocks.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I made one yesterday out of different coloured seaweed.
Okay.
Wow.
You can see a little shape. So yeah, I'm just finding a way at the moment to coordinate being in the environment, getting some exercise, creating something, and also practicing sort of sustainability by creating no waste and just leaving a little trace.
And I know that you are leading a creative mental health forum and self-care retreat, which is coming up. So yeah, I'd love you to share a little bit about what's your vision behind the creative mental health retreat, and yeah, what are you hoping that will create?
Thank you. Yeah, so the Creative Mental Health Forum and Self-Care Retreat, it was, I guess in some ways it's a response to having been locked down for so long last year, and the limited opportunities that we had to, well, arts therapists and people, creative practitioners, we had limited opportunities to connect in actual space, and I know you're still in that now, but we connected so much online. So there was a real sense of community being built throughout 2020, and I facilitated quite a number of professional development activities for people in the arts therapy and creative mental health community, and we come together online quite a lot. So I didn't want to replicate 2020 into 2021, and I'm sure nobody really wants to replicate 2020. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to run all these online events this year. I'm just going to put my energy into one in-person event where we can come together in real space, and also make it an opportunity for maybe people who do live in the urban environment to come down to the coast and have the opportunity to have walks in nature and by the water, and even get in the water, even though it'll be freezing. We have wetsuits for that. So yeah, connect with nature, connect with each other, and connect with ourselves. And also, you know what it's like when a whole bunch of creative people get together, you can't imagine what might happen. So just creating a space for the unimagined to become possible. That's, yeah, to nurture ourselves and each other. That's what it's about. It's also, I have to be honest, it's also in response to the recent findings of the Royal Commission into Victoria's mental health system. And so some of the recommendations that have come out of that are about, they're a vision for creating a mental health system that's holistic and inclusive and diverse, and that respects and values lived experience, that respects and values spirituality and connection to place, and community and culture. And all of those values that are in this vision for the new mental health system are actually values that I think, are common to creatives, and certainly common to creative arts therapists. So in some ways also the forum is being designed to showcase how the arts therapies are really in alignment with those values.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. So now that we're on values, what would you say are your 3 highest values personally, and how do they inform your work?
Yeah. I have a whole chapter about that in my book.
I bet you do.
I'm just it's about, when I really investigated it, the way I came up with of describing that is, I've always said that art is at the heart of everything I do. But when I looked into that deeply, I came up with 3 things actually, and it was being practice-led, being interconnected, and being organic. Okay, so they're the words that I use to describe those central values. And the practice-led is sort of, if you think of what that's not, it's not being theory-led, right? It's actually grounded. It's being led by your creative process, your creative practice. And the interconnectedness is about, just the interconnection of all life. And so that, we're interconnected. We're right now just in our discussion, we're creating new understandings and new meanings and new ways of knowing. And every time, any of us does anything, we have a ripple-on effect that affects the whole world, even in the tiniest way. I know that I'm on your wavelength here because I hear you sing about these things as well, right? So that's the interconnectedness. And then the organic. I love this. And I'm still working with this idea, but it's about having organic structures. And that's sort of in deep contrast, if you like, to the way that our society is structured, which is often hierarchical or patriarchal or colonial or, monarchistic. So they're all hierarchical structures. And organic structure, right, is something that starts with a seed and energy and it grows, right? And we can't even imagine the shape it might take, but it is a structure. It's organized, but it's organic. And I really love working in organic ways. So I love even meeting with you and going, hey, we didn't plan the conversation, but we'll just let it grow. And I actually love projects that grow where we're not focusing on the end goal, but we're just focusing on the process of growing.
Yeah, love that one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Carla. It's so wonderful
Thanks.
to share this conversation with you. Thank you for all your wisdom and your insights and for just sharing so much about your process and all of the incredible things that you're creating. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show with us. And
thanks, Carla.
where can everybody find out about your work? Where can people connect with you? Where can they follow your artistry and also the incredible things you're doing with the mental health forums and arts therapy?
Yeah, thanks. My website is, everything's kind of centralized on the website. So it's just carlavanlaar.com. And yeah, that's the easiest place, just one central location. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Conscious Creatives.
Yeah, you can follow New Earth Arising on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And check out our website, neweartharising.com, to learn more about our coaching programs and our merchandise.
Yeah, it's your boy Exodus.
And your girl Kattimoni.
Keep rising, keep shining. Yo, peace.
This is for the visionary people, the conscious creators, leaders of love and the soul elevators, artists of life, yeah, movers and shakers, heart-centered.